Here's everything you missed in WandaVision Episode 3. What's black and white and red all over? Well, if you said Episode 3 of WandaVision, you'd be wrong because it left the grayscale world of classic sitcoms behind for the Technicolor TV shows of the 1970s. After setting up the stakes in the first 2 episodes last week, Episode 3 defies physics, biology, and basically any and all laws of nature as the facade of Wanda and Vision's idyllic suburban existence continues to fracture in front of our very eyes. And of course, while this surreal sci-fi saga plays out, there are plenty of Easter eggs, deep-cut references, and secrets hiding in plain sight, and we're going to break them down for you right now. And if you prefer to read about these bad boys, our resident Marvel maven Rosie Knight has you covered over on Nerdist.com, which I will link to in the description below. But first, an obligatory spoiler warning. In order to spill the beans, we have to spoil WandaVision Episode 3, so if you haven't seen it yet, make like the Vision and run, don't walk out of here until this is all over.
Yes, so long as we hurry.
Alright, are all the spoiler phobes gone? Great, let's get into it, shall we? So, WandaVision leaves behind shows like I Love Lucy, The Dick Van Dyke Show, and Bewitched in favor of paying homage to shows like The Brady Bunch, The Mary Tyler Moore Show, and The Partridge Family. Now, this is really hammered home by a Brady Bunch-esque opening with a bunch of hexagons in it, and a massive staircase that mirrors the Brady Bunch set as well. And the repeated title, that is straight out of The Mary Tyler Moore Show. There's also plenty of studio backlots used in the opening and over the course of the episode as well. Case in point, when Herb, who may or may not be Herbert Wyndham, the High Evolutionary, is trimming his hedges just a little bit too far, he's clearly standing in front of a painted backdrop.
Hey, buddy.
And speaking of Herb, things get awfully creepy awfully quickly as he transitions from trimming his hedges to cutting through the wall that separates him from Wanda, which feels like an obvious reference to the fact that they're all trapped in here by walls of Wanda's own design. Now, going back to those hexagons real quick, they are a repeated motif we see throughout the series thus far. In this episode, we see them in the opening titles, as well as Geraldine's earrings later on. And the beekeeper from last episode also makes us think of honeycomb, which is actually hexagonal, and hexagons and beekeepers, of course, make us think of advanced idea mechanics, aka AIM, the offshoot of Hydra in the comics founded by Wanda's former captor, Baron von Strucker, and we saw them first in the MCU in Iron Man 3. So has AIM infiltrated S.W.O.R.D. like Hydra infiltrated S.H.I.E.L.D.? Well, we'll just have to wait and see. Now, next up, when Wanda is painting the baby's room, she uses cans of Simser paint, which is named for Jeremy Simser, a storyboard artist who worked on WandaVision as well as a bunch of other Marvel projects. And Wanda also seems to be losing control of this reality. She accidentally turned the baby's butterfly mobile into actual butterflies, so she's not totally in control.
Oh, did I do that? I didn't mean to.
Now, the prospective names of Wanda and Vision's impending twin baby should immediately be familiar to Marvel Comics fans. Billy and Tommy are the names of Wanda and Vision's kids who, spoiler alert for the comics, turn out to be these magical constructs made from what turn out to be fragments of Mephisto's soul. There's also some goofy dude named Master Pandemonium who gets involved and turns them into screaming beef mittens in a horrifying panel, but ultimately not quite worthy of Bernie Sanders at inauguration. They don't make mittens like that up in Vermont. Now, despite what Dr. Nielsen tries to tell them, Wanda is a human, but Vision is a synthezoid, so having kids shouldn't be biologically possible. The revelation that her children aren't real drives Wanda mad in the comics, leading to the horrifying events of the House of M arc, in which Wanda reshapes reality to suit herself. And as we mentioned, the end credits also name-check Brian Michael Bendis and Olivier Coipel, who are the creative forces behind that story, so clearly it's going to be a major influence over the course of this season. Now, that said, while Billy and Tommy's origins are tragic in the comics, years later they are reincarnated and become members of the Young Avengers. Wiccan, who has supernatural powers like his mom, and Speed, who has powers like his uncle, Quicksilver. And with a slew of younger characters joining the Marvel Cinematic Universe in the years ahead, like Cassie Lang and Ant-Man, Kate Bishop in Hawkeye, Kamala Khan and Ms. Marvel, and America Chavez in Doctor Strange 2, it sure does seem like Marvel is building towards introducing us to the Young Avengers in a future phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, so keep your eyes peeled. Now, moving on from there, the doll that Vision is speedrunning diaper changing on is actually a reference to the Kitty Carryall doll from the Brady Bunch. Cindy's favorite toy that was actually the focus of a Season 1 episode, Kitty Carryall, is missing. Where'd she go? We'll find out. Now, Wanda's contractions keep causing the house to go haywire thanks to her hex magic and even cause a blackout in a neighboring home. This escalates over the course of the episode, indicating that perhaps the act of magically creating children from literally nothing is pushing her considerable powers to their limits. Now, speaking of their neighbors, if you watched our episode earlier this week, we have a theory about Dottie, now confirmed to be married to Phil Jones, and this only deepens our suspicions that rather than Mephisto, she is actually playing Arcana, a superhero with magic-based powers from Squadron Supreme, an alternate reality supergroup. And that would be a great way to also indicate to us that, yeah, guess what? We're heading to the multiverse. Now, given the high likelihood of Agnes being Agatha Harkness, it seems like an awful lot of characters with magical powers from the comics are being gathered together in one place. Whether these are creations of Wanda's making or magical beings pulled in from across the multiverse by sinister forces yet to be revealed, well, that remains to be seen. Next up, did you notice when the episode seemed to skip and Vision said a slightly different version of the same line? Well, don't worry, your internet didn't buffer there. When Vision seems on the verge of putting two and two together about something being off in Westview, reality gets rewritten once more. Now, most likely this is Wanda using her powers to tweak the reality around her, kind of like she did at the end of episode 2 when she said, no, and then everything just goes rewind style. Now, the commercial for Hydra Soak Bubble Bath Mix, which is a reference to the famous 1978 Calgon Take Me Away commercial, offers a few more clues, as well as connections to Wanda's past. Escaping to a world all her own, i.e. creating this reality bubble by finding the goddess within, is something she could only do thanks to the powers that Baron von Strucker's experiments with the Mind Stone, which, like the soapbox is blue, brought out of Wanda and her brother Pietro while they were Hydra's guinea pigs. Now, as for the goddess within mentioned in the tagline, that could be another sly reference to Hecate, the goddess of witchcraft who has connections to Wanda in the comics. Plus, there's also Agnes's ever-present brooch, which may or may not actually be this statue of Hecate and the Three Graces, rather than the Grim Reaper like we previously theorized. But then again, with all that talk about reading minds, maybe this Hydra soak is actually referencing Agent Coulson's bonkers theory about Hydra's blue mind control soap from Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
That blue soap everyone uses? Hydra loads it up with chemicals. It seeps into our bloodstream, implants false memories into our brains. They want us to believe this is a magical place.
I mean, look, sure, Coulson is inside of a magical virtual reality in that episode, but the parallels are certainly fun.
I make my own soap now.
Next up, we have Geraldine, who's rocking hexagonal earrings and a sword logo necklace. As a reminder, SWORD are the people who are monitoring this reality bubble and trying to make contact with Wanda through the radio and all types of weird sewer beekeepers. Now, in the MCU, it reportedly stands for Sentient Weapon Observation and Response Division, which is fitting considering Wanda and Vision are basically living weapons. Now, one of my favorite crackpot theories floating around out there is that the stork strutting around the house prior to Wanda giving birth, that is actually Mephisto! I know. It's ridiculous, but despite Wanda's attempts, the bird is impervious to her magic, maybe it has powers of its own, and considering that some folks theorized that Agnes's rabbit, Senior Scratchy, was actually Mephisto last week because his name, Mr. Scratch, is also a nickname for the devil, I'm just loving this trend of trying to find a random-ass animal to assign such significance to. I mean, look, who knows, maybe in episode 1, Mephisto was the lobster.
What a charming door knocker. Good night.
After Dr. Nielsen cryptically tells the Vision, small towns, you know, so hard to escape, Vision runs into deeply concerned Agnes and Herb, who are gossiping about Geraldine and how she's brand new to town without any home at all, and that gives us yet another clue that something is amiss. Meanwhile, inside, Wanda and Geraldine share a very sweet moment where Wanda reveals that she was also a twin, and mentions her dearly departed brother Pietro for the very first time since Age of Ultron. She sings a Sokovian lullaby to her newborn sons, and then Geraldine seemingly comes to a realization, remarking how Pietro was killed by Ultron, which is when things really start to get dark. Now, this throws Wanda for a loop. She realizes that Geraldine knows something she should not and is an intruder in her perfect world, something hammered home by her sword necklace. Now, her mood dramatically shifts, and it feels like Wanda might actually be the true villain of this show. But that said, I do think she's being manipulated by greater forces here. She's clearly the loaded gun, the sentient weapon pointed at the rest of the MCU, but Wanda, innocent. Now, something else to note is that we might see Pietro during the course of this season as well. If Wanda has the power to bring Vision back to life and make babies from thin air, why can't she bring back her slain sibling as well? Even crazier are rumors that Evan Peters, who played Quicksilver in the Fox X-Men movies, will also be appearing in this series, possibly as himself, possibly as Mephisto. If it's the former, that could be a dark, unexpected way to introduce us to the multiverse, offer Wanda access to a universe where Pietro is alive and well, and people like her are called mutants rather than miracles. Meanwhile, Herb is on the verge of telling Vision the truth about something, maybe how they're all trapped inside this town? Hello. But Agnes, who seems afraid of Wanda, stops him before he goes too far. She knows what's going on here. Wanda lies to Vision about what happened to Geraldine as the aspect ratio changes, letting us know it's about to get real. Geraldine, surrounded by Wanda's red magical energy, is forcibly ejected from the fictional Westview into the very real town of Westview through the walls of a barely visible force field that has the texture of a TV screen. You know, if you sit way too close to it. Ever do that when you're a kid? I definitely didn't. My eyesight's fine. Haha. Now, the monkey's daydream believer plays in the background while gun-toting sword agents rush into the field to surround Geraldine, who, thanks to prior reporting, we know is actually Monica Rambeau, the grown-up version of the character we first met in Captain Marvel. She's now seemingly an undercover agent of S.W.O.R.D. who infiltrated Wanda's reality bubble. In the comics, Monica's actually a member of the Avengers who uses monikers like Captain Marvel, Photon, Pulsar, and a whole slew of others. As for the song, maybe it's meant to invoke the idea that everyone is trapped inside of Wanda's daydream of a perfect life, or maybe it's a wink and a nod to a villainous being like Nightmare being the one to actually pull the strings behind all of this. So the question is whether Wanda created this force field herself, or S.W.O.R.D. is trying to contain Wanda's reality to Westview before it spreads out and subsumes the world as they know it. That's unclear, but what is clear is that they have a small army mobilized, so they're definitely taking the threat posed by the sentient weapon known as Scarlet Witch very, very seriously. And that is everything we spotted in WandaVision Episode 3. And we'll have plenty of theories, deep dives, and other MCU goodies for you over on Nerdist.com. But in the meantime, tell us, what did you think of this episode? Did you spot anything that we missed? Do you think Wanda's the big bad here? And what is S.W.O.R.D. really up to? Let us know in the comments below. And for the latest and greatest in the world of pop culture, stay tuned to Nerdist.com.